the question is, why would anybody expect the Chinese to play nice?
Well, first of all, nations work in their own national interests. Let's not be naive about this. We can dismiss all the highfalutin platitudes about peace and justice and stuff like that. But the bottom line is nations work in their own interests. We pay generals to win wars. We don't pay generals to lose wars. So we have to craft a treaty that looks at the interests of each nation. So why was it that President Ronald Reagan signed one of the greatest arms control treaties in history between the Soviet Union and the United States? Because it was in their interests. And the same thing here. The Chinese will realize that they're outgunned, that if it does come to a war, they're going to suffer a lot. We'll suffer more, of course, but they too will suffer with their economy. And that it is in their national interest to sign a treaty. And we have to have ways to enforce that treaty and penalties if they violate the treaty. That's how we did it during the Cold War, when there was a lot more at stake than what is at stake now. And I think that nations work in their own interests, and their interests should be peace, the peaceful exploration of outer space, rather than an arms race that no one's going to win, and we are the losers.
But Michio is missing a major point.
Your partner. Well, I was going to bring it to Badushi, and I was going to cite you, Avi. Badushi, Avi, in his opening, has said that the U.S. would win in a confrontation, and Michio is saying, well, the Chinese.
I think that's a fantasy. That's a fantasy to believe that you can win in a war that goes nuclear very, very soon. A nation like India, China, they're going to go nuclear because they know they're outgunned. And their ace in the hole is the EMP and nuclear weapons. If it goes to a war, it's going to go nuclear very fast.
But Michio, you are missing a crucial point. Can I just say in one sentence?
Jump in on that.
No, because I've asked Badushi to come in, and then I'll come to you. Thank you for respecting that. Go, Badushi.
Yes, thanks. I think we're missing the point here and looking at warfare in a very traditional way. You have to talk about soft power. And Michio, you mentioned having treaties that are in the interests of everybody. So think about space tech and China. Let me tie NASA together with China for you. China has really bad issues with pollution right now. Yesterday, NASA landed on an asteroid and scooped up material to bring back here to Earth. How can that be applied? It can be applied in mining, for instance. The asteroids out there contain all the material that we currently mine here on Earth. So if we continue to develop space technology, we would alleviate pollution associated with mining here on Earth, not just for the US, but also for China. So India and whatever other country you want to talk about. So if we can find that sweet spot where everybody benefits, I think those benefits will override the choking pollution or whatever other climate-related issues that you're talking about right now. And that involves soft power.
I think you raise an interesting point. We want a win-win situation, not a lose-lose situation. If it goes to war, it's lose-lose, with we as the biggest loser. There's a win-win situation when we sign a treaty that regulates the arms race, that sets guide rules and penalties if you violate them, and seals into stone, in some sense, our superiority in certain aspects of missile technology. That would be a win-win situation because in everyone's interest to manage the arms race rather than let it spiral out of control.
I want to bring in Avi on that because I cut you off before, so Avi, jump on in, please.
Yes, so I think Michio is missing a crucial point, and that is the private sector. It's not a frontier that is pursued only by nations. It's pursued by the private sector, and we know about SpaceX and Blue Origin's interest in going to Mars. And any treaty you sign among nations does not need to be satisfied by the private sector because the private sector has its own commercial interest. And therefore I would argue that
they have to obey laws. I would argue the laws say that private enterprise has to obey certain ground rules. If they don't, they go to jail.
Within the borders
That's called
of
American justice.
No, that's within the border.
No, private companies have to obey national laws, or else you go to jail.
Not in space.
That's the foundation of our American judicial system.
But there is no space law.
Raji, you've been very patient,
can I finish?
And you're politely raising your hand, so I want to bring you into the conversation. Raji, please jump in.
Yeah, Okay, of course, absolutely. Thank you. And I think the commercialization of actors in space is a very relevant point. You have SpaceX, you have Blue Origin, and so on and so forth. But if you look at the space commercial actors in China, they are not free. There is no free market out there. There is no market competition that is taking place. They have a mercantilist approach. They are run, driven, and managed completely by the state. So that's point number one. Second, the private sector is also bound by the laws that are signed by a particular nation. So if the SpaceX is going to launch something, they are bound by the laws that the US has signed on to. There are international treaties and regimes that govern even the outer space activities by the private sector. So it cannot be that private sector can do anything that they feel like. It's not a free for all game out there. I think that's a huge difference that one has to be kept in mind.